Welcome North Point on this 2026 snowpocalypse weekend. And we thank you for inviting us into your living room or a tablet or a screen near you. And we want to give a quick weather update. So I want to go to meteorologist Drew for the weather.
Yeah, John, it's still freezing out here. Back to you.
Still snowing? All right, sounds good. Well, hey, on a snowy weekend like this, one of my favorite things to do is for about 10 minutes, me and the family, we get all bundled up. We go outside. Me and my son try to build an epic fort. And we gang up on my wife and we throw snowballs at her, okay? It's the best time. We got about a good 10 minutes in us. And then we come back inside. But I can't be the only one that went outside this weekend. If you made any snow angels or an igloo or a fort or like a snowman, if you drop those pics below, we want to see them. Bonus points if you used a corncob pipe and a button nose and 2 eyes of coal, because who in the world has those things laying around in their house, okay? But, and if you didn't get outside, okay, drop a pic of the coziest living room vibe that you got going on, all right? We wanna see what's going on with you. But here's what I find, is that when we're done playing outside, oftentimes we'll come back inside, and my son turns into this amazing actor. Okay, he comes and he sits down on the couch and he lightly shivers and he's like, "Dad, I'm cold." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but we were just outside. You'll warm up." He's like, "No, but I know something that would warm me up even quicker." And I'm like, "Okay, like what? What do you need?" He's like, "A warm drink would be nice." And I'm like, "Let me guess, you want some hot chocolate?" And he's like, "Yes, I would. Can I get extra chocolate, marshmallows, whipped cream, and sprinkles on those whipped cream? Thanks, Dad. See ya." I'm like, what in the world just happened? Did I just become like your waiter? I got played, man. I got bamboozled, all right? But oftentimes, here's what I found. And kids are the best at this, but we do this too. If you want a certain thing, we tend to act a certain way. Right? Like if you want a certain thing, you tend to act a certain way. And we do this all the time, okay? Like if you are up for a promotion, if you want a certain thing, you tend, all of a sudden we respond to emails in 3 minutes or less. Usually we're a 48-hour kind of person, but now we want a certain thing, so we tend to act a certain way. Gals, you do this. If you want a certain thing, all of a sudden, your husband's jokes become so funny. Like, he's the funniest guy you've ever, oh my word, that's so good. Hey, I'm gonna go to Target and spend $100. Is that cool with you? If you want a certain thing, you tend to act a certain way. Dudes, we're no different. If we're golfing on Saturday, we're cleaning the house, we're like, "Babe, did you lose weight? Whatever it is, it's working right now." That we do that, okay? Because if you want a certain thing, we tend to act a certain way. And that's not a bad thing, okay? It's fine. But when it becomes bad is when we begin to do this with God. When we want a certain thing with God, we tend to act a certain way. And sometimes it can be pretty fake. Like if we want God to fix something in our marriage, all of a sudden, we're gonna come in and we're gonna be like, "Hey, I'm reading the Bible and I'm attending church every weekend, and because I want a certain thing to happen, so I'll tend to act a certain way." If I want God to bless my work, that's the time that, I start giving because I'm like, "God, if I bless you, you'll bless me." Is that how that works? Like if I want God to fix something in my life, all of a sudden I'll start negotiating with him. That, "God, if you make this happen, then I'll do this for you." And what happens over time with God is when you want a certain thing, you tend to act a certain way. And oftentimes we use spiritual behavior to get God to do something for us instead of letting God do something in us. That doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you human. In fact, we've been in this series, Invisible Jesus, because this isn't a 21st century problem. This is something that's been going on thousands of years. And throughout this series, we've been talking about, hey, where's Jesus in the 66 books of scripture? And so if you're new to the Bible, hey, don't worry. We're walking through each one of these books we're looking at these passages and just pulling out truths. We're saying, where's Jesus' heart, the character of God in each one of these books? And you don't need to be like a Hebrew scholar to be able to follow along, because a lot of these books are just the relationship between God and humans. And thousands of years later, we're still talking about a relationship with God and humans. And so even today, we're in this book of Micah. And Micah is a prophet. And prophet's just a fancy word for, he's a mouthpiece for God. So God speaks to Micah, and then Micah speaks to a nation. And who Micah's speaking to is really the Israelites. And it's been a kingdom that's been split in two. And on the northern part, you've got the kingdom of Israel. On the southern part, you've got the kingdom of Judah. And he's really speaking to both of the capitals. So you've got the capital of Israel is Samaria. The capital of Judah is Jerusalem. And here's what's going on. They've got a nation of people. They're acting a certain way with God to get a certain thing from him. What they'll do is, like, on Sunday, they'll attend the temple, and they've got all these ritual activities that they follow, these religious rituals. They'll make sacrifices to God so that they can live however they want the next day. So they're wildly religious on Sunday, and then they live their own life on Monday. And what happens over time is that they get to a spot where you could be religiously active, but they're spiritually hollow. In fact, it says this in Micah 2:2. It says on Sunday they'd live for God. They'd make sacrifices to him, and then on Monday they'd covet fields and seize them, and houses they'd take them. They'd defraud people of their homes, and they'd rob them of their inheritance. They'd put on a show while people are watching, and then the next day in the shadows, they'd do whatever they want. And they're like, we're good though. Because what their faith was a performance. Everything had to look good on the outside, but they knew in the inside nothing was working, nothing was changing. And so Micah is speaking to this nation of Israel and Judah. And here's what he's saying is that our faith shouldn't conform or perform. Our faith should transform. That's what it should do to your life. This isn't something that you conform to everyone around you. This isn't a performance that you put on Sunday. This is something that should transform your life on a Monday. And maybe you feel like that. Maybe you feel like a lot of the religious activity that you've been doing, it feels like a performance. Or it feels like you're just following what everybody else is telling you to do, but it doesn't actually feel like it's making a difference inside of you. And maybe you've been trying to do really good things. Maybe you've been serving, maybe you've been leading, maybe you've been volunteering. You've been doing all this religious activity for God, but it hasn't been leading to intimacy with God. Maybe you've been memorizing scriptures, and you've been listening to podcasts, and you've been watching messages like this, and you've been hearing the words, but you haven't been applying the words. Maybe you've been working on that visible sin that people can see, and you've been cleaning up your behavior, but you're still holding on to pride and arrogance and fear and control. And what you've been able to do is you've cleaned up your behavior, but you've ignored your heart. And none of these things none of these things are bad. I'm all about being more moral. I'm all about being better and setting goals and being disciplined. Those things can lead to health, but at the end of the day, what God doesn't need is your effort. He needs your surrender. And so many times our religious activity can feel like a performance as we do something for God, but we don't ever allow him to do something in us. And so this is where the nation of Israel and Judah were at. In fact, this is what they do on Mondays, okay? It says in Micah 3:11, it says, her leaders judge for a bribe. What would happen is judges that are supposed to be just and fair and bring the law, they were bought at a price, and they actually exploited the poor. And they were auctioned off to the highest bidder. It says that her priests teach for a price. What would happen is religious leaders, they would promise protection for the biggest givers, for the biggest donors, and everybody else. Well, if you didn't give enough, then God can't protect. They were corrupt. And it says her prophets tell fortunes for money, yet they look at the Lord's support and say, is not the Lord among us? No disaster will come upon us. And why do they think this? Because they know their God. They know that their God is gracious and merciful. They know that he's slow to anger and abounding in love. They know that he relents from sending calamity. What they've done is they're like, we put on this ritual. We've got hell insurance, okay? Because we've made these sacrifices. We put on these rituals on Sunday, and so cool, peace. We can do whatever we want on Monday, because here's what we know about our God. Our God is patient. He's gracious. He's merciful. So we're good. But here's what Micah's pleading with the nation of Israel about. I believe he'd be pleading with us today, is don't mistake God's patience for permission. Don't mistake God's patience in your life for permission to live whatever life you want. One of the scariest things about God is that he's patient. Like, that's scary. Like, for so many of us, like, God will let you build the life you want. God will let you wander. God will let you do your own thing. God will not take the steering wheel from you, but at the end of the day, he'll be waiting there for you when you're done. And that can be scary. It can be scary when you got a kid that's running and you're like, will this be the moment that they realize? Will this be the moment that they come back to God? It can be scary because God is patient. It can be scary when you've got a marriage that's healing, but it's going painfully slow and you don't know how long you can hold on. It can be scary when you want a chapter to end, but God just keeps on writing sentences. And you're like, when is this going to be over? God, like, can you just fix this? Can you butt in? Can you be done? One of the scariest things about God is that he's patient. But one of the most loving things about God is that he's patient. He doesn't demand that you get it right now. Even when you wander, even when you mess up, he's right there. He doesn't shame you when you get it wrong. If God wasn't patient with us, I don't know if any of us would be here. One of the scariest things about God is that he's patient. One of the most loving things about God is that he's patient. So when we look at the book of Micah, where's Jesus? Where's the character of God? Where's the heart and the characteristics of him? Well, in Micah, Jesus is our patience. But don't mistake God's patience for permission to live the kind of life you want, to do whatever you want, to act a certain way, to hopefully get a certain thing from him, to put on a performance on a Sunday and then do whatever you want on a Monday. Because here's what Micah says about the nation of Israel. He says, yes, your God is patient with you. Yes, he's gracious. Yes, he's merciful. Yes, he's all these things. He's abounding in love and slow to anger. Yes, he relents from sending calamity to you. But if you continue down this road, here is what's going to happen. In Micah 6:15, it says, you will sow but not reap. You will press olives but not use the oil. You will crush grapes but not drink the wine. Here's what he's saying. Your works will be pointless because it won't produce any fruit in your life. You'll have a lot of religious activity, but you will be spiritually hollow, and you will see that one day. And one of the gifts is that God's patience, but one of the scariest things is that he's patient. And you may look up one day and you may see that you have no fruit in your life. I picture it like this. I've got this apple. Maybe you've got one of those in your home. Maybe you're eating one right now. Okay, but this apple, go with me on this journey. Okay, this apple represents everything that's good in your life. And you live in Apple Field. In fact, you live in the core of Apple Field, and you attend Apple Point Church, and you're all about apples, okay? You've got apple jam, and you use Apple products, and you drink apple juice, and how about them apples? Okay, you're all about apples. And when you're at home, each one of you in your backyard, you've got an apple tree. And it's the pride of your house. And one morning you wake up, the crisp apple morning, You spread on your apple butter and you drink your hot apple cider. And you look out the window at your apple tree and you notice something. There aren't no apples on that tree. And so you head out there, you inspect it. Everything looks good on the outside. Branches look good, it's nice and strong. You look over at your neighbor's tree and they've got some apples that are starting to grow in. You've got neighbors over here and they got some apples that are starting to grow in, but you ain't got no apples on your tree. You're kind of nervous. So you head back inside and you start to kind of overcompensate. You blast your Apple music and you use all of your Apple products and you hop on Instagram and you scroll through all the apples and you're like, yes, I like that. You start to conform, okay? And you're like, yeah, those look a lot like my apples and everything. You get on Apple GPT and you look up top 10 ways to grow apples and you try every one of them. They're like, spray with some apple cider vinegar on your tree. So you've tried it all. And you go to bed, you're nervous. You wake up the next morning, the apple crack of dawn. You head out to look at your tree. There's still no apples. You're freaking out. You don't know what to do. And so what you start to do is you start to perform. You're like, well, I can't have anyone see that I don't have any apples. And so you take the apples that you had in your house and you start to tape them up on the tree before any of your neighbors wake up so that, yep, I got apples. You take some more apples with you. Okay, you spread it out underneath the tree. As soon as a neighbor comes out, you're like, hey, check out, mine are coming in too. Yeah, you just start performing to everybody around you because you can't have it where people don't believe that you got apples on your trees. Okay, you gotta make sure that people know that you got apples, okay? And that you're an apple guy and you are an apple gal and you're all about apples, okay? But you don't know what's going on because your tree ain't growing any apples and you're worried. So you go to bed that night, you can hardly sleep. You wake up the next morning, you're too ashamed to attend Apple Point Church, so you just pop online. There's a pastor there, Johnny Appleseed. He's talking about the virtues of apples. He's like, everybody ought to have apples growing on their apple tree. And you're like, amen. I think so, yeah. But there's something inside you that you're like, what is wrong with me? Why aren't there any apples growing on my tree? And by now, I hope you know I'm not talking about apples. I'm talking about your life. And might I suggest that you don't got a fruit problem? You're like, no, I definitely have a fruit problem. I'm not growing any apples on my trees. Maybe you don't have a fruit problem. Maybe you got a root problem. And maybe you've been trying to clean up your Christian behavior and you've been trying to act better and fake better and try harder and you've been doing all the things and I've stopped cussing, I've been attending church, you've been trying to fix everything you know on the outside. You've been trying to sweat out this fruit and grow this fruit when you've been ignoring your root. In fact, I wrote it down this way, is that to change my fruit, I must check my root. And I want to let you know, North Point isn't this place that you show up to show off your fruit. Hey, look how good my life is. Hey, look how everything's working out. This is the kind of place where you show up to inspect your root. That's why we're here. This isn't a place that you got to get sober and then you can show up to. This isn't the kind of place that you need to fix your life and figure everything out and then you look perfect and your kids are great and now you can show up. This is the kind of place where you show up as you are with whatever's going on in your life and we inspect our root. Every group that we got going on at North Point, is it a place to have more answers? Okay, that's a place for us to inspect our root. Every ministry that we have going on, isn't this place that you got to show up perfect looking to? It's a place where you come and you inspect your root. So the question today is, what are you rooted in? Are you rooted in a performance of what other people think of you? Are you rooted in religious activity? Are you rooted in money or status or fame or power or relationships? I'm here to tell you, if you're rooted in anything other than God, it's dying and it won't produce fruit in your life. And maybe for some of you, you're here and you're like, how do I do this? Well, this is the problem that the nation of Israel and Judah had. And in a nutshell, this is what Micah tells them, is that living for God isn't about trying harder, but it's about training differently. This isn't about trying harder and can I just, what are the top 10 ways to grow up? This is about training differently. You might have to do something different to get a different result. And this is what he tells the Israelites. In Micah 6:8, he says, he has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? It's like, hey, God's modeled this, and here's what he requires of you, these three things: to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. That's what it looks like. It might look like training a little bit differently, but here's the three things: to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And this first one, to act justly, really what he's talking to is the political leaders. He's saying, I want you to act justly. Some of you, you've been exploiting the poor. You've been auctioning yourself off, your voice off, your judgment off to the highest bidder. And what I want you to do what is right. I want you to do what is just. I don't want you to be bought at a price. I want you to act justly. And then he speaks to the religious leaders. And he says, I want you to love mercy. I don't want you to promise mercy to the highest bidder. I don't want those that are the biggest givers and the biggest donors. I don't want them to be the ones that get the mercy, and the rest of you, you got to figure it out. You don't have the spiritual protection from God unless you're able to sacrifice more. He's saying, I want you to love mercy. This isn't a try harder, fake better religion. Love mercy, show mercy, give mercy. And then he speaks to everyone. He says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to walk humbly with God. You may be sitting there, you're like, what does that even mean? I get it. Sometimes the Bible can be clear, but it's not always easy to understand. So when I think about it, what does it look like to walk humbly with God? Well, one, it starts with you walk. You walk with him. Oftentimes when we think of our faith, we think of one singular grand gesture that we make to God. That's not what he desires. That's not what he needs. What he wants is every single day, one step, one step, one step. We talk here at North Point all about next steps. Drew's gonna talk about next steps at the end of this. And I don't care how long you've been following Jesus or where you're at on your spiritual journey, all of us have a next step to take. And every day, here's what he's saying: walk humbly with God. Take a next step, take a next step, take a next step. You've never arrived, you've never made it. Keep walking with him. It's not enough to just walk with him, walk humbly with him. When I think about humility, often it's not about you. And humility is often exposed in money and power and fame and success. And the question is this: do you use people to see those things, or do you use those things to see people? There's a practice that I've been doing that my dad passed on to me that has been pretty helpful in my life. That's helped me walk humbly with God, or at least it allows me to surrender my heart to him and he can reveal anything he needs to me. And so my dad, every morning, he walks miles. I walk minutes, okay? It's a little different. But what I do is I go for a 15-minute walk. And so you could do this on your lunch break. You could do this at the beginning of the day. You could do this at the end of the day. You could do this wherever you can squeeze in 15 minutes. But in 5-minute increments, I do different things. So for the first 5 minutes as I'm walking, what you do is you pray for others. You take 5 minutes and you pray for your family, you pray for your friends, you pray for your coworkers, you pray for your nation, you pray for your church, you pray for those on Facebook that have expressed it. Like you pray for anybody that you said praying for you this week. Like you take the time, you get the attention off you, and you pray for somebody else for 5 minutes. And then for the next 5 minutes of the walk while you're walking, you shut your mouth. You let God speak to you. And oftentimes, this isn't where God's audibly spoken to me or anything like that, but it is an opportunity for God to impress something on your heart. And oftentimes as I'm walking, there's something that pops up within me that I know I need to do, that I know I need to go apologize for, that I know I need to go make right, somebody that I need to go reach out to. Oftentimes there's an action that's associated when all of the busyness of life gets pushed down and things become quiet, they become clear. And then for the last 5 minutes of the walk, what you do is you thank God. You give him some gratitude for the things in your life. All of a sudden, it starts to be revealed, the faithfulness of him. The things in your life that you passed over out of busyness or overlooked throughout your day. That all of a sudden, you begin to be so grateful for what God's given you and bless you with. And what I found is at the end of that 15-minute walk, it's one of those opportunities where I get the focus off of me. I allow God to do something within my heart. And at the end of it, I end up being pretty grateful after it. And when I think about our walk with God, the most amazing thing about Christianity is not what we'll get, but it's about what we'll become. So many times we can do things for God, but we don't let him do things in us. And what would it look like this week to open up our heart, to open up our mind, to open up our lives as today, as you open up your living room or your TV screen or your phone screen? What would it look like to allow God to do something in you? And oftentimes when God produces some fruit in your life, when you begin to follow him, when it begins to be real, when things begin to grow, that fruit is not for you. It's not to show off how good your tree looks. The fruit is actually for those that are passing by and those that are around you, and they receive nourishment from it. It begins to be something so much better than just for you. It begins to be something amazing for those around you. I think my prayer for you this week would be you'd be able to lean into that. That this would be an opportunity to not just create more religious activity for God, but to allow him to do something within your heart and actually transform your life. Would you pray with me that you do that in your life today? God, with all the crazy weather this weekend, with all the things that are going on in our life, I pray that we'd be able to find a moment to be still with you, that you'd speak to us, you'd begin to expose areas of our heart that you want to be let in on. Maybe that we've closed off to you, that this is an opportunity for you to work in us. And God, I don't believe that's just going to be helpful for us. I believe that's going to be helpful for our family. That's going to be helpful for our community. That's going to be helpful for our coworkers. That's going to be helpful for everyone around us when we lean in on you and say, God, I don't want my faith to be a performance. I want it to transform my heart. In your name, amen.